it's Shan here, and welcome back to another episode of You Good, the Terrible Happy podcast sub-series where I endeavour to explore concepts, ideas, and things that I'm curious and interested about. I'm going through a real phase of learning and wanting to learn, a desire to learn and explore different things that I've learnt and through doing the podcast. I'm up to around 260 interviews or something, and while doing that, patterns have emerged, behaviours, concepts and ideas, and I have felt very compelled just to explore them and really challenge my own belief systems. This week's episode, I'm kind of like, I'm almost cringing at publishing it. It's on the topic of narcissism. I genuinely feel that I don't really know what it means. I have been labelled a narcissist. I've labelled other people as narcissists. And I really just want to get an understanding of it. So in this week's episode, I'm going to look into the psychological research. I'm going to reference a bunch of books. I really am not coming at any of these topics as an expert, but just someone who's curious by nature, and I love learning, and I am endeavouring to reference anything I'm discussing and talking about, and hopefully it sparks some ideas in you and maybe a desire to research further and explore. Maybe you're finding identification. Maybe it's going to help you reevaluate how you're behaving and what you're doing. I know like this week's topic has actually done that for me pretty significantly. And I also call up some past guests this week and get them on the phone and get their ideas and opinions on the topic of narcissism. And I just really want to emphasize again that like my purpose for doing an episode on a topic like narcissism isn't to develop an understanding so we can, throw that label at others, but more to create a mirror to look into ourselves and our own behaviors. So let's get stuck into it. So like I said, this week I'll be phoning some past guests to hear their thoughts on the topic, and I'll be referencing from the following books and research studies. So I've looked at Rethinking Narcissism by Dr. Craig Malkin, The Narcissism Epidemic by Jean Twenge and W. Keith Campbell, The Mirror Effect by Dr. Drew Pinsky, Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, and I also look at the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. I'll also be breaking the episode up into about 6 sections, and I'll be addressing the following questions. So section 1, I'll be looking at what is narcissism, like defining it. Part 2, I'll be relating it to skate culture and the narcissism paradox, but maybe not skate culture, but I guess any culture where there's a desire to market one's self to achieve some type of monetary success. That's generally what it leads to. Section 3, I will be looking at how to identify narcissism in our own lives. Section 4, I'll be looking at, what are the roots of narcissism? Like, where does it come from? Why do narcissists behave that way? Or why do we have narcissistic patterns? Like, where does it stem from? And then part 5, I'm going to list 6 ways that we can heal from narcissistic tendencies. There's a variety of different ways, and I've discovered that. It's really quite enlightening. I enjoyed that part of it. And then section 6 will just be like an outro. So 6 defined sections. And let's break it down. Let's get curious and let's get non-judgmental. Like I said, there's a bit of trepidation going into an episode like this. And then ironically, part of me was like, is doing an episode on narcissism narcissistic in itself? Is it covert narcissism? Like, it gets very convoluted. And again, I found the term narcissism, it's quite an ambiguous term. I have always struggled to clearly understand it and define it. So I'm going to get past guest Roy Molloy on the phone. He is the other member of the Alex Cameron Band. Great guy, saxophonist. He's a saxophone player, very creative. I was actually introduced to him by Dustin Dolan, and Dustin has used his music on his parts in the Baker videos. Super interesting cat. So let's see if we can get him on the phone.
G'day, Shan.
Roy Molloy, how are you?
Good, mate. Very well. How about yourself?
Mate, I'm fantastic. It is so great to get you on the phone. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How's your week been?
My week's been wonderful. It's bucketing rain. I'm up on the mid-north coast. What else? I've been, I've been cutting in a little bit, painting some houses, and
Cutting in.
Today was my. Sorry, I missed your call earlier. It's my mum's birthday, so we took her out to dinner, and we all had to put in our tips as well on the footy. So busy.
Mrs. Molloy.
Yep.
Happy birthday, Mrs. Molloy. And I hope you're not.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Thanks, man. Is it flooding in your area?
No, we're all good. We're kind of near a river here, so it just all washes out to sea.
The rain has been so gnarly.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, man, I'm not going to keep you for too long. Basically, I'm trying to understand the concept of narcissism. It's quite an ambiguous term that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand it, and I want to get a variety of views and opinions. I mean, I've been called a narcissist, like, believe it or not. I don't know. It might have been a past girlfriend, might have been an ex-wife. I don't know.
I mean, when you texted me and said the show you were doing was about narcissism, I was kind of tempted to Google it and just see, because similar to you, I'm not a psychologist and I wouldn't have any information about narcissism necessarily, other than what everyone else has got, which is off the internet. And totally, I think what you said is true. I think a lot of people maybe have used the word narcissist. Maybe I'm guilty of this. Maybe use the word narcissist to describe someone that they're not agreeing with on certain things, or someone that they're in a fight with, or someone that they broke up with, or something like that. So I think maybe the water's a little muddy around it. But on the flip side, I think, if you're asking the question, am I a narcissist? Maybe that goes away to maybe that's points on for not being a narcissist. Because I don't know that they would self-reflect like that if they were by definition. But
Good. Thanks.
And so what a narcissist is for me.
Yes.
I think I could only think of some traits that maybe stand out, and maybe it would be someone who is willing to discard people, someone who treats people as disposable or part of their plan or part of their vision of themselves or something.
Yeah, great. And that's how I feel. That's what I would think of when I think of a narcissist. Okay.
Yeah.
In this, I'll keep going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Other than that, in terms of the definition, I think, I think for the layman, it's a concept that's come a bit muddied.
I agree. And I feel that the label is thrown around quite easy. We will easily label others as narcissist or narcissistic, but we don't often reflect on our own behaviours. And that's what I want to get to the bottom of in this episode.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about myself, I am oftentimes thinking about myself, you know what I mean? Often, when I lie down in bed at night, I sometimes think, shit, did I say this to that person? Or I get up the next day and, in the morning I think, what am I going to do with my day? So, I don't know if it's a self-centeredness thing or, I'm also an artist, I write songs and stuff. And I think, if you're a songwriter and a performer, a part of the reason for doing that is wanting attention or wanting people to appreciate you or something, a sense of grandeur or sense of superiority or something. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe me and you are both narcissists. And and we just haven't got properly diagnosed.
Maybe this is covert narcissism, you know.
Maybe. But the flip side is, maybe if I'm understanding narcissism correct, I think a narcissist would be able to evade accusations of narcissism because they're cunning or they're, treacherous or something, lying.
Wow, dude, good analysis.
Yeah.
Well done. Because
thanks.
The music industry must be rife with narcissism.
Oh, yeah. Mostly it's the managers and the cunts like that. But I think, I think at the top of any industry, other than, things that are a little harder to measure, like obviously rugby league, it's a physical thing. But, I think at the top of politics probably is a lot of narcissists, just because that's the kind of person that would rise to the top of that field. At the top of, business, I'd say. Business probably is probably a lot of narcissistic personalities at the top of big businesses where they've sort of had to cutthroat their way to the top.
Do you think someone can be self-confident and not be narcissistic?
I think so, yeah. I think like a self-confident person could just be like secure in themselves, someone who maybe is just like very sure of what they value or sure of what's important. And, I think someone can be confident in their lack of narcissism, but maybe maybe they're all covert and psychos or whatever.
Anyway,
I don't know.
It's good, man.
That's an interesting question, though.
It is. No, it's great. And thanks for sharing your thoughts because it's a hard question. And I'm glad to actually connect with you. Before I got to go. I'm keeping it short today. I've got a lot to get through. Narcissism is a deep and convoluted topic. I'm going to call some other people in this episode. But before I go...
I'm looking forward to listening back and bloody finding something out about it. I might learn something.
Listen, I hope you do. But tell me a little bit about your radio show. Is that still going? I did listen to a few of your morning drive times.
Great.
Yeah, I got
the radio.
Can I give you feedback? Can I give you a bit of feedback on it?
Please.
I really enjoyed it. I did feel like I got told to fuck off a lot as a listener.
That's the reverse psychology of it, I do. Tune in or fuck off is our tagline. And as you're tuning in, you're actually not being told to fuck off because you're tuning in.
Well, I felt rebellious. I wanted to be rebellious. I'm like, don't tell me to, like, my mind went, don't tell me to fuck off. Like, maybe that's narcissist.
You're going to have to tune in then,
It's great. The song choice is so on point. Wow.
Oh, thanks. It's the listeners. It's a request show. So please, anytime you're listening to something and you think, that belongs on the Illegal Radio Drive Time Power Hour with Roy Molloy, please send me a text, Shan. I'd love to play your song, play a request of yours on the show. Definitely.
I've got some ideas. Little update on the Alex Cameron band. Where are you guys at?
Actually, I haven't spoken to Alex in a while. We're on a bit of a hiatus, but I'm pretty sure he's in the studio working hard, just tinkering away in like a solo kind of mindset. But stay tuned. I'm sure Alex has music coming soon.
I've really got Dustin Dolan to thank for connecting me with you and your music. I mean, I'd been listening to your songs in the Baker videos and not even considering who was playing them. But then I've been really delving deep into your catalogue on Spotify, and man, that song K-Hole might be one of the most profound songs ever.
Thanks.
Dude,
it's what a beauty.
Those lyrics are so all-time.
Thank you very much.
Just
full credit to Al for those,
Yeah. Just give us a little. That one. Just remind us of the lyrics in the chorus. Like, there's only room for one in the K-hole. Is that right?
No, it's genius lyrics. You're right. I don't want to sound like an a-hole.
That's right.
There's only room for one in the K-hole. Oh no, I don't want to sound like an a-hole. I don't want to be ungrateful. Promise when I fall, you'll be something. There's only room for one in the K-hole. Brilliant, right? I'm trying to remember now myself. Sometimes when, because we perform the show, I perform the songs a lot on stage. I sometimes don't listen to them when I'm tinkering around the house. But I'm glad you like that K-hole. That's a cracker. I'm really glad you're into that. Have you ever? Well, I wonder, maybe one day we'll do some K together, me and you.
Never been in a K-hole. I've been in other types of, I won't say holes, but I've been in other types of mental paths to enlightenment. That's where I've been.
Well, one day you and I will lay our heads back and enter the K-hole together, and I can only imagine what kind of ideas that'll yield.
Dude, listen, I'm standing by to be a guest on the radio show one morning. If you'll have me, I listened to some of your interviews. They're brilliant. You're brilliant at what you do. So if you're out there listening, jump on to Roy Molloy's Instagram. It's the Marvelous Crane, or at Marvelous Crane, and there's links to his radio show in his bio. And where else can they, get on the radio show?
I think, if you type in Roy Molloy, all O's, no A's, Roy Molloy, illegal radio, drive time, power hour, or some of those words, you'll come across it. It's on a radio app called Blast.
Excellent.
Which is a brilliant app in and of itself. But, yeah.
Excellent. And you can catch Roy's episode on Terrible Happy. It is episode number 247. You can meet. I was going to say 247.
I never forget that. That's a wonderful chat. I still, a lot of people write to me about that, Shan, and say how much they enjoy that conversation. So I really appreciate it.
Likewise, mate. It's an absolute pleasure. Mr. Roy Molloy, everyone. Stay dry, good sir, and we'll be in touch.
Likewise. Looking forward to it. See you later, Shan.
See you, brother. So let's get into part one. What is narcissism really? Let's define it. So let's start with the basics. The term narcissism comes from Greek mythology. Narcissus was the guy who fell in love with his own reflection and wasted away staring at it. But in modern psychology, narcissism is more nuanced. According to the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is characterized by these things: grandiosity, a need for excessive admiration, a lack of empathy, fantasies of success, power, and brilliance, and a sense of entitlement. But let's be real, very few people meet the clinical threshold. More commonly, what we're dealing with is narcissistic traits. It's like a spectrum, I guess, that most of us move along at different points in our lives. Dr. Craig Malkin, in his book Rethinking Narcissism, says this. He says, narcissism is a trait that we all possess to some degree. It's the drive to feel special. It only becomes a problem when it's excessive or absent. Okay, so narcissism can drive confidence, ambition, and even creativity. And I think this is where I struggle with it, because where is the line between self-belief, being ambitious, and then being a narcissist? It gets convoluted and confusing for me. So I guess when it tips over into arrogance, manipulation, or if someone's ego becomes fragile and it's masked by bravado, or I think what I've learned through researching this episode is when someone really can't handle criticism. I think that's another big trait, and a lack of empathy. I think they're the tipping points. So something to think about. But let's get someone else on the phone, and he's also a past guest, one of my favourite Australian skateboarders. He's so intelligent. He discussed the idea of doing an episode on narcissism with me just a few weeks ago. We talked about it. He's super creative. He's built some of the best skate parks in Australia. He's been doing it for many years. It's Mr. Scott Spring. So let's get him on the phone.
Hello.
Mr. Scott Spring.
Speaking.
How are you, brother?
I'm well. How are you?
Dude, I'm so good. Hey, listen, man, I'm doing an episode on narcissism. I'm trying to understand it. I've been called a narcissist sometimes in my life. And I just want to touch base with you. And we briefly discussed this in a phone call recently and just get your take on it, especially in relation to like skate culture, because I kind of always relate back to that. So are you okay if we have a chat about that?
Yeah, great. Good one.
So listen, I'm going to ask you this question straight off the bat. Like, I'm trying to flip the script a little bit. I find people will readily label others as narcissist, but they won't reflect on their own behaviors and patterns. So are you able to identify narcissistic behaviors in yourself?
Gee, on the spot, straight away. Good one.
Sorry.
Yeah, sometimes, not all the time. Like you say, it's difficult to know how you're behaving, and we see the faults in others so often, I suppose. But sometimes I do, I think. Sometimes I've got friends around me that'll say, hey, you might be a bit out of line, you might want to think about it. So that's something that's good. Or trying on criticism from people, where people say, yeah, look, you might want to think about certain aspects. It might be like just a couple of close friends or confidants, not necessarily everyone. And, yeah, that's helpful. And then maybe something I've learned, I say, or still learning, is to walk away and then just try it on, have a think about it. I mean, sometimes it's not accurate or it's not relevant, So, yeah, I suppose that might come with maturity.
I mean, how would you define it as a term in general? Because I think it's a really ambiguous term. And I think it can be used against people in a way to, I guess, control or belittle them at times.
Yeah. I think.
Hello, Scott. I lost you there a second, buddy.
It doesn't necessarily make him a narcissist.
So can you say that again? You just dropped out.
Okay. Yeah, well, I've heard that everybody or most people have narcissistic traits, but it doesn't necessarily make them a narcissist.
Yes.
So, yeah, we all drop the ball from time to time, is my thinking, and yeah.
I read some stuff, and I was just reading it on the podcast. There's a book called Rethinking Narcissism, and they're just sort of saying that it's a trait that we all possess to some degree, and it's the drive to feel special, and it only becomes a problem when it's excessive. Now, I guess I wanted to call you and talk to you about it just to make some links to skate culture because, where do you think you've seen it in skateboarding?
Say maybe when I was younger more, I noticed it in myself where I'll say more competitive.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think too, there's some people that want to be the guy and that push harder than others. It is a fine line between healthy competition and being egotistical or, I don't know, having some deficit of character that pushes you to want to be the person in the spotlight all the time or whatever.
Mm.
I mean, we all need recognition too, positive recognition in life, I think. So that doesn't always ring true with people. I think too with growing up too, like I think we were more, speaking for myself and say a few of my mates, we pushed more and we were cheekier and we all had our little group or our little tribe that thought more highly of ourselves than others at times, and I think that's all part of growing up. And I think opinions are cool, but I know for myself that having opinions, say, around skateboarding where I was younger, where I thought I had the idea that, mini ramps were better than vert or whatever the case may be, was just my opinion.
Mm.
And I got to a point where I just stopped pushing that agenda or suffering that or being up at 2 o'clock in the night saying, I can't believe so-and-so said that. And yeah.
But do you feel like as you got older, that your desire to seek recognition and validation became less?
Yeah, I think so.
when I developed aspects of my character, I suppose. I did have one moment. I must have been about 23, 24, living in Canberra with Tony Mann. And he introduced me to meditation and Ayurvedic medicine and all that cool stuff. And I had a session at Belko Bowl. So I moved down there to skate Belko Bowl specifically. And I was lying on the floor one night with like a sore hip and shoulder, probably a fractured wrist. I'd had a light concussion. This was, over a week of pushing.
Yeah.
And I was, I'd had a bevy and I was in a bit of a transcendental state, and a hippie woman walked past the door to the room I was standing in and said, "You don't have to do it to yourself." Mm. And I mean, I'd said nothing to her and that made me think. And I thought, far out, yeah, it was like a bit of a revelation for me. But after that, a few times I skated after that, I'd stand on the platform and go, "Oh, wow, this is not me. Like I'm too competitive or I'm too ambitious or whatever." And then I went the other way with that. So I went to like an ego death thing, or I was too passive, or I thought competing was a bad thing. But I suppose after the years after that, into say my 30s, I sort of learnt that it is cool to be competitive and get recognition, but it's a balance.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a balance. Yeah, that's a good point. No, that's great. And I am trying to devise and collate a range of opinions tonight on this episode. And I think that's a good one. I think balance for me really stood out there because I think it's okay to be self-confident and have self-belief, but where do you balance that between then putting others down through that or maybe lacking empathy? That's what I'm wondering. So
yeah, I see that. I think so. That's something I've tried to do more over the years is try and consider the position of other people. That they're not going to think the way I do, and I can't necessarily have an agenda or push an opinion onto them. I'm only doing myself a disservice, or it just creates conflict that probably isn't necessary. I mean, I think it is important to, sometimes push the point.
Yeah.
But to know where that edge is, Know
where the edge
and
is.
that varies person to person. We're all different people.
Mm.
I mean, some people will be more intense skateboarders than others. They got more drive, or some people might be more articulate, or whatever the case is. But I suppose we're all different characters,
Yeah, and in the I was just reading out the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders on narcissistic personality disorder, and it's characterized by grandiosity, a need for excessive admiration, a lack of empathy, fantasies of success, power, and brilliance, and a sense of entitlement. And I think, like, again, just to relate it to skating, where, style and image are a big part of the culture. Do you think it can be a slippery slope for people in skateboarding or action sports or anything where they have to market themselves?
Yeah, definitely. That's like, I was never a professional skater, but I saw, say, guys like Steve Caballero and Grosso and a lot of the professionals that have been professionals for years, and that's a tough game. And having that public persona like they do, that's difficult. And it's because it's a career as well. So if you're appeasing sponsors or working with them, and you got your own viewpoints, and I suppose that's where people say would choose a company that suits what they're doing better, or people start their own company that might be a different aspect of the culture or more political or something in their approach.
Yeah, man.
That's what makes skateboarding interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
it is too. It's
that key word I think that you said out of the DSM is what was it? It wasn't extreme. It was
excessive.
Yeah, excessive. That's the word.
A need for excessive admiration.
Yeah,
It's a tough topic, hey? Like, honestly, as I started like researching and putting this together, I'm like, this is hard to come at, and I've avoided it, but I'm glad that I'm talking about it. And
yeah, it's not that much in conversation, I suppose. It is sometimes.
It isn't. It isn't. Like the only way I hear it is when people are labeling others as narcissists. Like, I mean, the most common one of late is always, Donald Trump's a narcissist. You hear that all the time, and it's. I just find it a really ambiguous term. So,
yeah, and thinking back, like I remember people saying to me, like mainly older people or elders, "Oh, don't be a poser," and I mean, so there was a lot of constructive criticism going around at the time too, and still is.
Yeah,
maybe not in psychological terms, but definitely in the culture.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I'm gonna keep moving because I'm gonna call a few more people, and I've got a bit more to get through. But man, thanks for talking. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Good work, mate.
Thanks, brother. And hey, listen, quick one. How's things up in the mountains today? Blue Mountains.
It's pissing down rain.
It's raining up there as well.
Yeah, but I'm under a roof having a cup of green tea, mate. I'm doing okay.
Mate, you are. All right. Well, it's Mr. Scott Spring, everyone. You can go and check out Scott's episode we did recently. I think it's episode number. What episode number is it, Scott? 2.
I don't remember.
I think it's episode 2. You can go and check it out in the back catalogue. It was 256, Scott Spring, and he shares about his lifetime of building ramps, skateboarding, and eco-housing and all sorts of stuff. So go and check it out.
All righty. Thanks, Shannon.
See you, legend. Bye.
See you, mate.
So let's get into part 2. I named this part Skate Culture and the Narcissism Paradox, but I think I want to call it Pop Culture and the Narcissism Paradox. Look, my friend Ty recently said to me the other day after listening to the Flow State episode, he's like, you don't have to keep relating everything back to skateboarding just because you love skating and whatnot. You also love other things, and skating isn't this elite activity that surpasses everything. And he's kind of right, but I guess let's call it pop culture, and let's, bring it back to that, we live in a world where, posting clips on social media, whether it's a skate clip or a clip of you on a holiday or dining out somewhere really nice, is it's just so ingrained and almost just accepted. Whereas like the culture was vastly different before the advent of smartphones, and it was like if you were kind of self-promoting too much, especially in Australian culture, you would definitely be cut down for that. But now it's just really accepted. If I do bring it back to skating, like I see skating as this raw, expressive and like individualistic activity. And I guess that's what I love and others love about it. And people hang their sense of identity on it. But at the same time, like it's really, I have to question myself, like how much is it me like wanting to show people what I'm doing on a skateboard, or is it just built on like creating an image or a persona? And I guess especially being as a podcaster, and I'm always like, how much of this is me just trying to like create a persona and an image and sell something really? How much of it is ego? I'm always like questioning that. I'm challenged by it. And again, another reason why I felt compelled to do an episode on narcissism. But going back to the social media thing, like I guess I have to ask myself, am I posting this because like I'm sharing like my art or my passion, or am I just seeking approval? And I guess that's tricky. Or am I just chasing approval through likes and comments? I don't know. I felt it, and I've seen it in others too, just like questioning it. Why are they doing that? And I've also seen how easy it is for us to confuse validation with self-worth. That's something that I've been feeling like, am I seeking validation through the things that I'm doing and say that I love, or am I, seeking like, is it giving me self-worth? I don't know. But I looked at a part of this book called The Mirror Effect by Dr. Drew Pinsky, and there's a quote in there, and it said, in a narcissistic culture, we start to value people for being seen rather than for being real. And I guess social media sort of ramps that idea up big time. You can curate your identity. You can sell an image of success, even while feeling hollow in the inside. And yeah, I've done it. And I guess when we look at other people's lives, like you're only seeing what they want you to see. It's not real, but I feel like we have just got to this point where people have just actually lost complete reality with that. Like they're just numb to it now. And I guess, if I was like, speaking to a lot of sponsored and pro skaters, I guess over the years where, an image, selling an image and their style is like almost part of their job and part of the culture, I'm assuming it would be a really slippery slope. And I guess for anyone too, even artists as well, it must be a very hard line to draw and not get caught up in. Okay, so let's get into part 3, which is how narcissism shows up in our lives. It's a tricky one. It is in our lives. We behave in certain ways, and after, reading and researching and talking to some people, it's definitely in my life. So here's how narcissism might sneak in. Few things that I've discovered. Number 1, defensiveness when someone challenges you. So narcissists apparently don't handle criticism very well. And if you've ever had someone give you feedback, even if it's done lovingly and you felt this surge of anger or shame, that's not just pride. It can be a narcissistic defense mechanism, apparently. So according to Dr. Craig Malkin, he's a clinical psychologist and author of Rethinking Narcissism, narcissists, especially the vulnerable kind, and I'm going to go into that. I want to zoom into the vulnerable kind of narcissist in a minute, often react defensively to protect a fragile sense of self. So I guess in activities or cultures or creative circles where identity is tied to performance or originality, criticism can feel like an existential threat or a threat to their career even. But I want to zoom in on that term, vulnerable narcissism. It really sort of caught my attention, and I just went on a bit of a deep dive with it. And here are some things that I've learned. So we often picture narcissism or a narcissist as someone who's loud, arrogant, constantly showing off. That's what psychologists refer to as a grandiose narcissism trait, or a grandiose narcissist. The classic, like, look at me type. I guess that's what we automatically think of. But there's the vulnerable narcissist, or vulnerable narcissism is different. It's more hidden and it's more inward. And again, it challenged me. It challenged me when I read this stuff because I feel it. And people with vulnerable narcissistic traits may appear shy, sensitive. They don't dominate the room. They might even avoid it. And but under the surface, they're still deeply preoccupied with how others perceive them. They still crave recognition and admiration. They just express it differently. And they go on to say that vulnerable narcissism is like needing to be seen, but being terrified of being exposed. So here's what it looks like, and it is an oversensitivity to criticism again. So a small comment can feel like a personal attack. The reaction may be withdrawn. There may be rumination or a silent resentment. So it's more internalized. The next part is feelings of shame and inadequacy. So these individuals may feel like imposters, like imposter syndrome, terrified people will find out they're not good enough. And that's just a real fear. Emotional volatility. Their self-esteem may fluctuate wildly depending on how they're perceived in any given moment. And passive expressions of superiority. So superiority, but passive about it. So instead of bragging, they may act morally or intellectually above others, or quietly resent those who seem more confident or successful. So psychologists in that book also distinguish vulnerable narcissists from grandiose narcissists, while both types share, like they say that while both types share an insecurity and a need for admiration, vulnerable narcissists tend to be more emotionally fragile, anxious, and socially withdrawn. So they're not the life of the party. They're more like the person in the corner, silently wondering if they're being judged. I guess what's important to understand is this, that vulnerable narcissism often stems from early experiences of neglect, emotional inconsistency, or shame. And again, this really comes up a lot when I've been researching this topic, and I'm going to go more into it in the next part when I look at the psychology behind it. So, yeah, stay tuned. Anyway, but going back into, how narcissism shows up in our life, it could be exaggerating achievements to cover insecurity. So, like, exaggerating is a big part of it. We've all been guilty of it. I'm still guilty of it. So that story that maybe, again, related to skateboarding, that, you landed a trick maybe and you tell people you did it first try or second try, but really it was like 20 tries. That could be one. Another one could be like just over exaggerating, like you may have got a DM from someone who's kind of notable, but then you go and tell people that, hey, I'm doing an exclusive collab with that person. Like this isn't just flexing. It can be a sign of like underlying insecurity. So research published in the Personality and Individual Differences magazine, it's a psychology magazine, highlights that narcissistic individuals often inflate their accomplishment to gain validation and, I guess, push away feelings of inadequacy. It's not about being a bad person. It's about feeling like you're not enough without the extra shine. And I mean, I've met people who have achieved great things, but still have to elaborate and shine it up even more. And what they've done is already amazing. So, yeah, another way that it might show up in your life is difficulty empathizing when a mate is struggling, or just having difficulty like empathizing in general. So let's say a mate opens up about their mental health or a setback, and your first instinct is to like change the subject or give unsolicited advice or downplay it. That can be a lack of emotional capacity. But it can also be a narcissistic trait, and the inability to hold space for another person's pain, especially a close friend, without making it about yourself. That could be a narcissistic trait. Empathy, as psychologist Daniel Goleman noted in his book Emotional Intelligence, is a skill that narcissistic tendencies erode over time. Empathy. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's a practice. It's a skill. I'll work on that. Next part, the need for external validation. This might be another way it shows up. You need that external validation. Just like I said, going back into like exaggerating achievements, but you really need those likes. You really need applause. You really need clips. Your love language might be like words of affirmation constantly. So I guess in a world of like, clips and reels, and it's easy to, equate self-worth with engagement. Like how much engagement did my account get? And this is especially potent in the activities that I do, like action sports, skateboarding, surfing. I guess where like if you land something and do something good, and posting it online becomes more important than anything else, like that becomes your currency. That's something to be really wary of. So again, going back to the book by Dr. Jean Twenge, explains in the Narcissism Epidemic, he says that social media amplifies narcissistic tendencies by rewarding attention-seeking behaviors with likes and comments, reinforcing the external validation loop. Man, so much, like everything comes back to social media as being like overtly bad. I'm sorry, it just generally is. That's what I'm discovering, and I personally carry a lot of resentment towards social media, like its addictive nature, the way it's been made so well, how adapted it is to everybody's life and enmeshed in everybody's life. And when we're at a point where people don't even question that anymore. I do remember the time when people were questioning the use of social media and being on it, and people used to hassle you if they realized you were on it too much. But I don't actually see that as much anymore. People have just become numb to it and go, oh yeah, they're just on social media constantly. And, are we looking out for each other in that respect? I don't know. So another way it might show up in your life is feeling like superior or inferior, like it flips both ways. And I guess that's when I was talking about the vulnerable narcissism. Obviously, like there's the grandiose narcissist, a desire to always feel superior. But then also there's the vulnerable narcissist who is really like more in the inferior and doesn't want to say much and doesn't need to promote themselves, but will just sit in silence with it. And again, it's linked to more of like an anxiousness. So I guess, after sort of looking at the ways that it may show up in our lives, I guess if, I've been thinking more and more, and as I'm learning, is if we stopped labeling narcissism as a bad thing and started seeing it as like a signpost and a light that says like there's something here, there's some unmet need, some hidden shame, some wounds, some still healing. Like again, that's empathy building, like empathy for other people and maybe kindness for yourself. So like I once heard that anxiety, so I don't know where I heard it. It might have been in like an AA meeting, if I'm honest. Someone said that anxiety is like, it's not a bad thing, but it's a good thing because it's a signpost that something needs to change in your life. So maybe this is the same sort of vibe. We can see it as, okay, have I got some deep-seated stuff here that I need to deal with? But I'm going to talk about it in the next section. All right, so part 4, the roots. Where does narcissism come from? So let's zoom out a little bit. It's easy to spot narcissistic behavior, okay? People who dominate conversations, crave attention, blah, blah, blah. And I've also brought up the vulnerable narcissist. But what's underneath that behavior often tells a much deeper, more human story. Again, things I didn't consider until I started consciously trying to understand what I still feel is an ambiguous concept and topic and word. But here we go. So most psychologists agree narcissism isn't about genuine confidence. It's about protection, protecting oneself. So what we're really seeing is a defense mechanism, emotional, armor developed to guard against feelings of inadequacy, shame, or rejection. So if you see someone demonstrating what you may label as a narcissist, maybe you can show some empathy and look at them as someone who is dealing with heavy feelings of inadequacy, shame, or rejection. There you go. So a bit more of a psychological understanding here is one major misunderstanding is that narcissists love themselves too much, but research and clinical experience suggest otherwise. Narcissistic traits often mask deep insecurity and unworthiness, and psychologist Donald Winnicott talked about the false self versus the real self. Seems really obvious, right? And the false self is the version we show the world, which is curated, confident, and controlled. We might do it in our workplace. We might do it even in our friends' circle, social situations. Who knows? The real self is generally vulnerable, honest, and we hide it because it's it could be really broken, raw, messy, and ugly. So for someone with narcissistic traits, the false self becomes like the only safe option for them because the real self is just maybe too hard to look at or too hard to deal with. Like it's, you want to avoid it. So some of the other psychological research done on this topic and this concept is, and it came up and I'd never heard of it, it's called the role of early praise in developing narcissistic traits and behaviors. So the role of early praise in the Narcissism Epidemic book I keep referring to by Jean Twenge and Keith Campbell, they argue that early unearned praise in a child can contribute to like a fragile self-esteem. So when kids are told they're amazing for just existing, not for trying, growing, or struggling, they may develop a sense of superiority without a solid foundation. So that kind of praise doesn't build real confidence. It builds a need to maintain a perfect image at all costs. And when failure or criticism inevitably comes, the child compensates by becoming louder, more dominant, more like special, and that becomes the seed of narcissism. So early praise, I didn't even consider that. So the other one is neglect, overindulgence, and the distorted mirror. So on the flip side, narcissism can also come from neglect or inconsistent caregiving. If a child doesn't feel seen, validated, or emotionally safe, they may learn to perform for love. They may decide they have to become someone bigger, better, more impressive to be worthy. Even overindulgence can have similar effects. When a child is constantly told they're better than others, they may not develop empathy, humility, or a realistic sense of self. They grow dependent on feeling superior, all while fearing deep down that they're not enough. So this is what psychologists call a distorted mirror. Children build their sense of self by reflecting on how caregivers respond to them. If those reflections are inconsistent, overtly flattering, or emotionally absent, the child's self-image warps to match. Man, like it's heavy. It's just heavy. Like, and if you're a parent listening to this, it's full on. Like, it's a very big and high level of responsibility you have caring for a child, and their emotional stability is so fragile. So even like praising them too much for doing nothing can, be a negative thing. So I guess why it all matters is like narcissism, it's definitely not just ego. And I think when I read these things that I've just read you and from those books, again, I just immediately feel empathy and feel sorry for someone that an adult that may be displaying those characteristics and behaviors, because it's just genuinely stemmed from their childhood. So it's a survival strategy. It's a shield against those early wounds and a way of managing the unbearable feelings of not being enough. Until those early experiences are understood and healed, I guess the false self runs the show. And in a world where there's so many opportunities for the false self to just run rampant. So vulnerability, though, feels threatening, and I guess real connection feels dangerous for people. And I guess the cycle keeps repeating. And as I read that, I feel a sense of, I don't know, futility in maybe, human nature and characteristics and the world we live in. I can't help it. But I guess talking about it, and if it makes me or someone out there reflect a little bit on how they're behaving, or maybe just take some steps to address some of that, childhood stuff that may have happened to them, and that's going to help them make better decisions by moving forward as an adult, or maybe the world might slightly become a better place. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to call me mate, Steve Tierney. If you grew up skateboarding in Sydney in the 90s, you would have seen Steve Tierney cruising around. He was always in the skate mags. He just had the raddest style. These days, he's a profound artist. He loves a collage. He's just had an amazing individual show down in Melbourne. He's been in some published books recently. He's running collage workshops. He's a father, and I really value his opinion. He's been involved in the podcast too. He's co-hosted a bunch of episodes. He's been on the show as well. So let's try and get him on the phone.
Shan.
Hey, bro.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, mate.
You got a minute?
I've got a minute, yeah. What's happening?
I'm doing an episode on the topic of narcissism. I'll give you a bit of background. I personally find it a really ambiguous term, and it's also been a topic that I've avoided even talking about because I don't quite understand personally what it means. However, I've been guilty of labeling other people as narcissists, and I'm just going to give you a call. I'm calling you just to see, like, how would you personally define the term narcissism?
How would I just define it? It's kind of like being obsessed with yourself, right? And kind of thinking you're more important than anyone else, basically, isn't it? kind of. I mean, that's how I would think of it. It's like a narcissist is someone who thinks everything they're doing is the most important thing, and basically nothing else matters. I don't know, kind of like that.
Yeah, and that's why I want to talk to you.
In a way.
That's why I want to talk to you specifically. So at the moment, like you've got lots going on. Aside from being a father, you've had art shows happening. You've been in books. You're doing collage workshops. Your graphic design work is, busy as it's ever been. So you're constantly in the creative realm, working with creatives. So do you ever feel like coming up in that realm, you're coming up against heavy narcissism in the art world?
Yeah, right. I wouldn't say coming up against it. I mean, narcissism's a funny thing, I think, because we live in a world now probably where it's maybe not lost meaning, but it's not as easy to define maybe or something, because I think in the art world specifically, well, not specifically the art world, but just the online presence, obviously, the prime example is Instagram, right, and social media, and this idea that everyone's putting themselves out there and kind of obsessed with promoting themselves online and stuff like that. So there's an element, if you were to define it as narcissism, a lot of the way we live is pretty narcissistic in a way, right? But in the art world, it's hard because I wouldn't say, I definitely don't think I'm a narcissist, and I don't think anyone would call me one, but my life, it revolves around my artwork, at least, is very much about self-promotion. And because I don't have anyone working for me, you know what I mean? Like some artists have galleries that promote them or agents that can help promote them. But for me personally, I'm basically my own. I'm me, the artist, and I'm my promoter, and I'm my marketing person, and I'm all these other things. And a lot of artists are that. And there's a lot of conversations about that with artists, and a lot of, I guess, anxiety with artists about it. I personally don't find it that difficult to deal with. I just kind of get on with it and do it, and I try not to overthink it. But there's a lot of I have to put myself out there, right, and put myself online. But I think the difference is, and it's a fine line, like, because you can see people just constantly posting pictures of themselves or doing this stuff, and I think there's a fine line between like self-promotion that's necessary and kind of just self, over obsession or something, but I think, narcissism is kind of defined in the sense that you have no understanding of other people's you're not empathetic in a way. You just think everything you do is it. I mean, the prime example in the current climate of the world is Donald Trump. He's 100%, you cannot argue, any psychologist, anyone would say he's 100% the perfect example of a narcissist. But
do you know what the clinical diagnosis of a narcissist is?
What?
Well,
are you asking me, or do you know?
Well, I know. I had a look at the DSM-5 diagnosis, and you just said that Trump is that, and they say in that diagnosis that that it's characterized by grandiosity, a need for excessive admiration, a lack of empathy, which you touched on, fantasies of success, power, and brilliance, and a sense of entitlement.
Yeah, I mean, it sums up him, right? And I guess the idea with, my understanding of narcissism is that people who are narcissistic won't ever not admit, but they can't see that they're narcissistic. Whereas I think, like, for myself or a lot of people who are putting themselves out there and getting online and putting images of themselves or promoting themselves or whatever they do, if you can kind of say, I know what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, and if you can take criticism or you can change your concept of what you're doing because of what feedback you might get, then I don't think you're narcissistic. But if you can't, if you look at what happened in the news today with Trump, he sat down with the South African president and basically spilled off this whole shit about this white genocide that he thinks happening, which seems to be, anyway, that's a whole other story. But basically, he's just ran off this complete bullshit to the president of a country who knows much more about his country than Trump does. And then the guy came back with his facts of what it was, and then this, Donald Trump just would not even accept it and just moves through. So that's a narcissist who can't even see like any other pathway or any other idea. That's what I would understand.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah.
Okay.
Whereas someone like myself or a lot of other people I know who probably a lot of people might look at their online presence and think and say, maybe not call them a narcissist, but there's if you were to define it from back before the world we live in now, the current social media climate, a lot of us would probably be classed as narcissistic because it just looks that way from the outsider's perspective. But I think a lot of people. Sorry, you
raised one of the best points I've heard tonight. Actually, you said the inability to accept criticism or feedback.
Yeah.
I think that's a real defining factor between someone who may have self-belief, self-confidence.
That's fine.
And then someone who may then just be on the tipping point of becoming narcissistic, because then it's like win at all cost kind of vibe. Like,
there's just not even an acknowledgement of it. Like, and it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell with someone like him in particular. I mean, it's a perfect example, and I don't want to shit example because I hate talking about it.
It's already come up tonight already.
It's too obvious. It's too obvious. There's so many others, but. Yeah, like do people like that really actually not fully comprehend? Like, or is there a comprehension and then a cutoff, or are they literally in that much of ignorance? I would say that's 100% the definition of narcissism. If you've gotten to the point where you can't even see it,
I feel like,
and you can't acknowledge it, but we live in a world where this is the world we live in right now, right? Where it's all about self. The real easiest way to express yourself and to give an opinion is to get online and give it. And whether it's a pretty kind of a shit world we live in that sense, but it's the world we live in. And I guess there's just fine lines. I see it and I can understand it, but I think some people maybe don't, or they might be quick to assume before fully appreciating it. But sometimes it's just fucking blatantly obvious, right? Like,
do you seek personal validation from your work? So you said that you are required to promote it. Let's face it, it's your livelihood in some ways. It's your passion. But what happens when you don't get validation for your work?
Nothing really. Like, for sure, I do seek it. Like, as an artist, you kind of are seeking it. I tend to, I don't know, I'm pretty good at like not letting things get to me too much. We've had this talk before. I mean, thinking the podcast we did, you know what I mean? We kind of covered it. Like, I'm pretty good at not letting things bother me, but I think about it all the time. Like, I mean, I just did this exhibition in Melbourne and it was huge. It was super important for me. And yeah, of course, like there's a want in me for people to like see that work and give me some kind of feedback or conversation about it. But it's not really about validation in like, oh, I'm doing such a great job or good on you, Steve. Like, it's so cool. My validation, and I had this conversation with the gallerist when I was down there and a few people since doing the show. A lot of the work, exhibitions I do, it's about just conversations. I want to open up conversations with people. So even an exhibition may not have a financial reward for me in terms of sales or whatever, but the real, like, actual validation I get is from a conversation I might have with one person in the gallery that's all about the work, and then I see that they understand it, or they even have to understand it, but they just get something from it, and we have this meaningful conversation, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, like, there are people in my world that, you know, I want to see the work and I want their kind of opinion, but I'm not over obsessed with, a validation to my work in a way.
I mean, you're the third.
Okay.
You're the third
Yeah,
person
sorry.
I've spoke to tonight, and I feel
Yeah,
like,
right.
and already there's like common themes coming up in people's response to the term, and I feel like the commonalities so far are really like a lack of empathy, and also inability to accept that they might be wrong or criticism. I feel like they might be the two standout points, because I also believe there's a lot of value in self-confidence, and we don't want to beat that out of people. And I feel,
for sure.
I feel like Australian culture has a history of doing that, especially on a social level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, it's very hard trying to tackle this topic, but I thought, nah, man, fuck it, I'm gonna let's talk about narcissism, because, like I said, I hear it all the time, and the Trump labeling of being a narcissist is the most common one you hear. Like, and straight away you said it.
Just too easy.
I said it earlier. So anyway, listen, I've got to move on quickly. What's new in Steve's world? Give us a quick update.
Mate, as you said, I'm so fucking flat out. I mean, the biggest news I got is that I've got my second kid coming in about 6 weeks or something, a couple of months.
Congratulations, brother.
So that's going to be mega. It might be why I'm just like working my ass off right now, trying to get as much done as I can. So I know I'll be not doing much for a little while. But so that's huge. A little girl. I got a little daughter coming in August.
Congratulations, sir.
So that's mega. My son is turning 6 tomorrow, literally in about 3 hours. He's so freaking excited. So yeah, man, I'm just like, besides the work I do for myself and all the shit I've somehow managed to get done, I'm really enjoying my family life at the moment and living down the South Coast, down near Wollongong. It's, pretty chill.
Yeah, dude. Lovely.
Besides the mad hustle that we all do, I'm finding time to enjoy life.
I don't want to go too deep into it now because I don't have the time, but I do want to say, like, having children has that, for me, I know it has been, but has it been the same for you in terms of they really highlight your personality traits and bring that to light? Do you see your behaviour patterns in your son? Or characteristics?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, for sure. And it's so weird, right? Because it's hard to tell. Am I like, is it my own influence or something, or is it natural? It's hard to tell. But for sure, dude. Yeah, we're hilariously very much the same. And and
they're so
it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the second kid, because I mean, you've seen that. Does it carry on in the second kid, or does the other kid become the other adult, the other parent a bit more? Or I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be amazing, and you're going to be you're the best dad ever, mate. I've seen you in action.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mr. Steve Tierney, everyone.
All right, bro.
You.
Thanks, dude. Thanks for the call.
Chat soon, legend. Bye.
Cheers, mate.
Okay, so part 5, how to heal from narcissistic tendencies. I've got a list here, so let's go. Empathy is the big key in this one. It's just empathy. I keep thinking empathy. Empathy is everything. It really is. So remember, narcissism isn't a fixed identity. It's a pattern, and like all patterns, we can rewire it. It can be rewired, and you can find ways and support to do this. There's people out there that can help. It could be a therapist. It could be the pastor at your church. It could be your guru, wherever you're finding that inspiration. Here's what helps, in my opinion. Number 1, self-awareness. Ask yourself these things. Why do I want this attention? What am I trying to prove? And can I tolerate not being seen? I've got to ask myself that all the time. So things like journaling, therapy, conversing with friends, or honest conversations have really cracked me open. I talk about it all the time on here, like just finding really good friends that you can really open up to, and without fear of judgment. I think that's been the biggest one for me. But for you, it may be, like I said, journaling, therapy, again, religion, whatever works for you. Let's do it. Number 2, empathy practice. Empathy. Make it a point to listen more than you speak. Make it a point to listen more than you speak. Put yourself in someone else's shoes, and real empathy dissolves ego. So if you're really putting yourself in someone's shoes, it's going to push the ego down. It's going to be that ego death, right? I'm always practicing it when I interview people. And I work so hard at giving them the space to speak and not just jumping in and fighting those urges. And also fighting that mental urge of like, am I listening to this person or am I just waiting my turn to speak? And I think I've developed it a bit more and more, but I still battle with it on a daily basis. Number 3, create for the love of it. So if you're an artist, skateboarder, surfer, whatever, engineer, do it for the love. Whatever you do it for the love, but not for the likes, for the joy. I talked about this in the flow state episode. Find that space where your identity doesn't depend on applause. Again, I went skateboarding. I've been skating a bit lately with this amazing skateboarder from Newcastle he's literally probably one of the best skaters you'll ever see in the streets, but chases no recognition, no spotlight, doesn't even want it, couldn't even care about, filming a clip, will skate by himself for hours and, throw himself around and just for the pure passion and joy. And it's really inspiring and it's really checked me actually. Number 4, boundaries. If you're dealing with someone who has strong narcissistic traits, especially a boss, a partner, or a teammate, set clear boundaries. Remember, we can't fix people, but you can protect your own peace. You can't change people, but you can change how you respond to them. Set your boundaries and just be clear with it. It's like, no, that's not for me, and then stick with it. And that's a whole nother argument too. Like I've for many years thought that the only way I could protect my boundaries is through forms of violence, whether it be physical violence, verbal violence, even, I guess, emotional violence, like, icing them out, like just silent treating them and stuff like that. It's not the right way to do it. But I think there's a skill and an art to setting your boundaries and sticking to your boundaries and being firm and fair. That's something to work on. Yeah, boundaries for sure. Number 5, community and feedback. Surround yourself with people who tell you the truth, not just what you want to hear. And that's real love. And I've learned that. I've also basically pushed people out of my life who have told me the truth, didn't want to hear it, and then rejected them. Not proud of it. Yeah, it's hard to say that actually. But yeah, people who tell you the truth, they're the ones that really love you, I think, especially if they're doing it in kindness and with your best interests at heart. And again, if narcissistic characteristics are emerging in your life, one of those signposts is your ability to take on criticism and take on feedback. And if you're really struggling with that, well, then that's the sign that, okay, there's something deeper to look at here. Like, why am I being affected? What do I need to actually get to the bottom of, and why can't I handle this? Anyway, so I want to talk about it more with my mate and past guest, James McMillan. He's a surfer. He's an artist. He's also the founder of the Byron Bay Surf Festival. He's an author of the book Blue Yonder. So let's see if we can get him on the phone.
Hello, mate.
Yeah, James.
How are you, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks, mate.
Listen, man, I'm tackling the concept of narcissism in a solo episode this week. And I've had a few people on the phone. You're the 4th person I've spoke to tonight. And I'm just trying to get people's personal idea of narcissism. And the reason I ask is because I truly don't really understand it and want to understand it better. I've been called a narcissist in the past, which I'm not proud of, but I don't quite understand it. I think it's ambiguous. So from your perspective, how would you define it?
From what I know, I guess, and experience in my life is, I guess it's when someone has like a high sense of their own importance. And maybe in a blown out sense of like, their character in a certain culture or what they mean, in a workplace even, or in a friend circle, or, stuff like that. But it's, I don't know, because it's, people might say, oh, this, that woman's a narcissist or that man's a narcissist. But, it's like, I guess your self-importance is like either feedback you get from your culture or the society, or it could be, I guess the shadow side of narcissism from what I understand is like, I think it's something like, it's actually the opposite. It's like, feelings of worthlessness and shame and stuff like that. So it comes out pretty much the opposite way,
Yeah, I mean, narcissism can drive confidence, ambition, and even creativity. Like, has there been a point in which it has tipped over into arrogance or manipulation for you?
I don't know if I have, had experienced it. I mean, I've never been called that, or no one's ever said it to me, but, I think there's certain things that can drive success, and like, I guess just off the track a little bit of narcissism, just as a bit of a contrast, like personally, I'm really optimistic, and I have, I'm naive in some ways, and I also, I love solving problems. So, those three things, get me into some pretty, interesting situations, because I think I can, solve a problem somewhere, like in my art, or sometimes even in surfing and stuff like that. They'll take me to places where, I'll end up in like, a lot of trouble in the ocean, or like I'll be deep into some art that I thought I could tackle, but I'll be like, shit, how do I solve this picture now? And I think with narcissism, like, having that, over self-confidence, or like, feeling that you're more, you might actually not be as important really as what you think you are, it can actually, put you in a state of mind where, you'll end up achieving greater things than you could have if you didn't think that about yourself.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean by that? Like,
well, I do.
Kind of, they can have a positive side to them, but I think generally it's probably negative, I guess, in a society or in a culture.
Well, that's my question really, is like, at what point does it become negative? Because I think like self-belief and self-confidence are crucial and good. They're good things. We should have them.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's the tipping point? What are the characteristics that then turn it into a negative thing? Like I think that the main one that's come up tonight is like when it becomes like a lack of empathy or an inability to consider the viewpoint of others. Yeah,
for sure. I think you can see and feel when it sort of tips over the line of, to that sort of stuff. And like, if your whole, sense of purpose in the world and stuff is like preoccupied by, power and success, and, you getting to this place on that, work ladder or sport ladder or whatever it is, and you'll step over people to get there and don't have, that empathy for others. I think it becomes clear when someone's entering that kind of territory, or even, maybe hopefully yourself. But I think if you do get into that territory, you'll soon get feedback off, maybe the people closest to you if you're lucky. Or if it's not, that'll be other people that, you don't know that well, might start saying things, or you'll hear things. And hopefully, I don't know, some of those things can be hard to get out of sometimes, like those character traits, and, I've got some of my own that have persisted my whole life. But I don't think narcissism's been one of them. So, but yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying. Yeah, when does it tip over, into that unhealthy area? But I think what you mentioned, and maybe a bit of what I said,
I was just curious to talk to you about it because, like, you're very much you're in the art world and you're also in the surfing world, and these are your passions. But those activities or those things are very individualistic, and so are they breeding grounds for narcissism? I mean, especially in art, like people are looking for validation from their works, right?
Yeah. Well, I think some people are for sure, you know, like it depends what your reason is for doing it, you know, and like, you know, it's like, I think it's important for artists to be able to show your work, you know, like, you know, there's all different levels of that. There's, you know, it comes from, you know, either your family seeing your work or, you know, people dropping by the studio is pretty nice, you know, to show them what you've been doing or what you're up to, because not everything gets, you know, out there in the public eye. So, and validation, yeah, I guess, you know, it goes across everything. The whole validation thing, doesn't it, you know? And I don't know, we could get into some deeper territory with, like, you know, the experiences from your childhood and stuff like that. You know, what were your validations there or what were they not? And how's that sort of, you know, tipped over into your, you know, your professional life, you know, your relationship life and stuff like that. But I think it's healthy to be able to, you know, get out of the studio and see other people and show your art and get feedback and be open to feedback. And art's pretty nice like that, I think, because it's quite, you know, it's not subjective, it's objective, you know, to the viewer. So it's like, you know, some people might take things personally about comments on their art, but it's pretty healthy if you don't, because everyone's going to have a different, you know.
How do you accept feedback on your art?
I love it. I just love hearing what people say about it and stuff like that. It's
what if you disagree?
It's just always, what's that?
What happens when you disagree with it, though?
Oh, I don't mind. I don't mind. It's like, you know, disagree. It's like, because what you paint as a picture or what you write as work can be interpreted in so many different ways. And I love getting into like conversations about things, you know, that people might think, oh, that's like this, or I thought it meant that, or how it makes me feel, or whatever. I think that's really cool stuff. I'm always curious about stuff, you know, so I don't, because the way I paint's pretty free, really. I don't really have, you know, generally, you know, pinpoint fixed ideas about what I do. I'm pretty open to, you know, paint what's coming through me and stuff like that, you know, in most of my art anyway.
Hey, tonight I read from a book called The Narcissism Epidemic, and in line with what you were saying, like, you know, do we really consider where these kind of behaviour patterns emerge from? And I don't think most people do. Like, we label people as narcissistic, and it comes with, you know, distaste for that person. But again, it's in line with not showing that person empathy, even though they're not showing empathy. Like, what's beneath the surface? And this book sort of talks about how, you know, narcissism is linked to trauma and neglect. And if a child's like emotionally neglected or abandoned or has inconsistent caregiving, they're going to be constantly seeking validation, and that translates into their adulthood as well. So, I think you're a parent. When I read that, it really hit home for me. And I realised how important what we do, how important it is what we do with our children. So,
yeah, I'm hearing you on that one. It's hard to sort of, you know, and then you know, when I hear you saying that, I think, oh, okay, I'm thinking about how I am as a parent, even how I was today. You know, we went down to the park this afternoon for a sunset surf, me and Noah.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had a great time and all that sort of stuff, but just, you know, everything you say to these kids, I think, you know, they're so spongy, everything goes in, and you don't always get feedback from it, but, you know, I think the feedback will come later on as they grow up. But I don't think there's one correct way to do anything, you know, like, you know, it doesn't seem like there's one recipe that'll get you, you know, the right result for that child and that child and that child and that child. They're just, you know, I've had 3 boys now and they're all so different, you know, and, you know, well, you think you've got it sort of with that one, so you use that on the next one, but it won't work, you know. God damn, I thought that was going to work, it didn't work. You know, so it's, they're so individualistic and need different things, so I think you have to be open to experiment with, you know, the ways you treat, you know, your children and people in general, because everyone's so different.
They are, man.
It's really hard to get it right, you know, with anything in this life.
I agree. It's a tough topic, hey? Narcissism.
Yeah.
But it's used. That term is used so often.
And I do hear people using it a lot, actually, and sometimes I just like, wow. I often look at myself and think, wow, and have I got any of that? Like, can I not see it? Because it's really hard to see things in yourself, isn't it? Until someone gives you some feedback, and then you're like, oh wow, okay, maybe I should look at that. So,
I just question if it's overused. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm just saying, like, is it overused?
Well, look, I haven't heard it for a while, to be honest, but I do, when you were saying it, I'm like, yeah, I definitely heard it come up a few times in conversations where people are talking about other people and stuff like that. And, I don't know. I think it's, maybe it's might be in different groups of people that are doing different things, whether it's a sport or, or music or, different cultures might, have more or less conversations about it and stuff like that,
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd hear it in every single culture, but I don't know, would you hear it in cooking or, you might hear it in surfing or music or, I don't know, maybe in modelling.
I just think with surfing and skateboarding, to make it, it's not just, it's tied into not just skill anymore, it's how you market yourself. It's such a big part of it. And we often see sometimes like the best surfer doesn't necessarily get the biggest paycheck because they haven't worked out how to market themselves properly. They're not selling themselves or their image as good as they could. So that's where I think in those activities it's interesting. It's interesting to analyse. So
yeah, for sure. I'm hearing what you're saying there, and I agree with you for sure too. You see, because I've got, I do follow a lot of skateboarders on Instagram, and that, and a lot of surfers because I grew up doing both of those, and I do see, some of the skateboarders and surfers I follow that, in my opinion, better than a lot of the others that are making it, financially, and I guess, and in the public eye more, but I think you see they seem to be able to follow that kind of formula that works in the mainstream media better than some of the others, some of the more raw kind of wild women and men, maybe don't get as much exposure as the other ones that fit the mainstream mold. So they're the ones that end up with, bigger paychecks, more money, more sponsors and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, and I don't think, the other people, the other ones maybe don't fit that mold and they can't be like that, so they end up, I was going to say missing out, but maybe they're not missing out. Maybe they're really happy with where they are. And,
but I just think it's these days, like skill alone is definitely not enough. And you have to be able to like also market an image, and that would be very hard in terms of like not being narcissistic about it, because anyway, I wonder.
That's a different conversation when you sort of, I guess, if you're talking directly about, Instagram, TikTok, and I wouldn't say Facebook. I don't even look at that anymore, but probably is that one as well, though. But yeah, sort of, putting yourself out there on that level. It's that's it. Like your own media team is you.
Totally, man. Totally.
And I respect people to do that, do it in a good way, and it's something you can learn a lot for some of the things that people put out there and put up there, and and I guess it works for them and stuff like that. And everyone chooses who they follow and who they look at, and like and comment on, and that you basically you're supporting that person to keep doing what they're doing. Totally. By liking their stuff, following them, and reposting or whatever you do.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, tricky one out there these days,
Yeah, bro.
For that crew.
That's so tricky. It's not a clear path to success, and what is success? But look, it's been so nice touching base with you. What's I gotta get moving because I'm trying to get through a lot in this episode. But quickly, what's in the works for James McMillan at the moment?
Mate, in the works is I'm working on my second book at the moment. So yeah, that's kind of at the forefront of any of my sort of creative projects at the moment. Yeah, so got about 80% done. So yeah,
Nice.
hoping to release that at the end of this year. Blue Yonder.
Blue Yonder 2?
Well, yeah, it's called Blue Yonder: A Journey into the Heart of the Surf Culture, like the first book, but then it's 20 years down the line.
Ah,
So yeah, 20 years on from the last one, and yeah, you'll see all of the same people that were in the first one, and some new people that I've met over the last 20 years and spent time with surfing and spent time, doing creative projects with and stuff like that in Australia and California and different places. So
epic.
yeah.
Like, where are they now kind of vibe?
Yeah, some of them are the where are they now kind of thing, and then there's some new ones that I sort of met, directly after, the first one, and followed that same, because I like to spend time with people. If I spend time with people and you get to know them and you get to know them at a deeper level. It's not just sort of ringing someone up and interviewing them for your project. You kind of some people I've shared, art studios with and stuff like that for years and stuff like that. You have conversations every day, all day while you're painting, and you really get to know them. And then, I take photos and, and I've just got, I've got lots of material, photos from the last 20 years and
amazing.
All sorts of different stuff, mate. So yeah, putting all that together and just doing some other small, painting and stuff on the side and chasing waves and,
Nice.
all the usual stuff to keep us happy and healthy.
And just a quick one, are you getting flooded up there? We're in a huge rain event here in Australia on the East Coast at the moment. Flooding?
No, we got lucky. We've had our first patches of sunshine the last 2 days here in Byron, because we have just rain forever before that. But yesterday and today, mate, it's been beautiful, like rain, beautiful waves, and we're just really lucky at the moment up here. I mean, it's gone the opposite way, and the flood's been gnarly down south.
Oh, it's crazy. It hasn't stopped raining here for 2 weeks straight.
Wow, in Newey.
Yep.
Wow,
So,
heavy. We did have that, mate, a couple of weeks ago, but we've come into a sunny stretch now. So
thanks.
Wow. Well, I hope you guys are all right down there, mate.
Fine.
And it doesn't get too crazy.
It's just, it's an interesting one. I didn't think it'd last this long, but well, listen, I'm going to get moving. It's so great. And Mr. James McMillan, everyone, I've done 2 episodes with James, I think, and you can go and check out his episodes in the back catalogue, and you'll really get to delve into his life a bit more in those ones. So thanks, James.
Great to chat
Jimmy,
with you, mate.
See you, legend.
See you, Shan. Bye, mate.
Bye. So anyway, going to wrap it up. This is like the closing section of the podcast. Still learning a lot in terms of how to structure these. I could use some feedback, actually. If you hate them, let me know. I'm going to take that criticism on. But if you're going to tell me you hate them, just like give me some tips as to like why you hate it, like what things about it. But I, again, feel very compelled to just share these things and the things that I'm feeling compelled to learn about. And I just want to learn with people. I guess I've established this platform and this audience, and I want to bring something significant to the plate. A few people have been reaching out, asking me, going, when's the next interview and who's on next? And there are some interviews lined up, so stand by for that. I'm definitely not deviating away from it. But at the moment, I've just felt like this is what I want to be doing right now. And it's consumed me. There's a lot of energy and effort spent on scheduling guests, finding the right guests, finding people who just even want to be on. So I've decided to divert that energy into what I'm doing today. But yes, there are some interviews coming up, so stand by for that. But anyway, just to close all this up a little bit, there's a few things I want to say. I guess the paradox in it all is that, like, the more we chase admiration, the emptier we feel. And I know that we've all had that. But when we and I've seen this and I've learnt this myself time and time again, like when we show up real, flawed, vulnerable and honest, like we find connection. Like earlier in the episode, I made reference to the fact that, I go to AA meetings and work on that. And I've done that for many years now. I mean, there was a time when I was so scared I would never dare to even say that. It was so hidden. But now I just am surprised at how it's just so nonchalant, and I'm just really at peace with it. And that vulnerability, I think, has become maybe a strength. And I love what author Brené Brown said. Brené Brown said, vulnerability is the birthplace of connection and the path to the feeling of worthiness. And I'm like, yeah, damn, that's so true. And the more vulnerable I am, it's almost like it brings the right people into my life and the right experiences into my life and sets me on the right direction. So vulnerability is a strength. Maybe that's a good way to end up on. So maybe the way out of narcissism isn't self-hate, it's self-honesty, owning both your brilliance and your brokenness, knowing that you're enough, not because of your highlight reel, but because you're human, and that's all. So that's it, a deep dive into narcissism. Again, not as a label to throw at others, but as a mirror or a signpost to look into ourselves. And there are ways to genuinely heal from this. And I just want to urge people to stop labeling everyone as narcissists. Like I hear it all the time, like, they're a narcissist this. And again, it's so ambiguous. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It's just not clear. And hopefully this has maybe given you a bit more clarity, because ultimately we are all on that spectrum, and we all have these traits, and we all have these, traits that are linked to maybe emotional neglect of some way, or maybe overpraise. Maybe that was you. Maybe you were overly praised for not doing much as a kid and then just had to keep chasing that your whole life. I don't know. But I don't know. I just think that label is thrown at people too readily. So yeah. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, I don't know, maybe share it with someone. But if you don't, that's cool. Stay curious, stay kind, and keep charging. Cheers.